Hey everybody, welcome back to Superhuman Customs. I'm Stephen Human, and today we have another McFarlane figure to customize. We are going to be customizing this Three Jokers Batman. As soon as I saw this guy, I thought, okay, this is probably the quintessential comic book Batman. He's big, he's beefy. My son Sam bought one months ago when it first came out. Probably, I don't even know how long ago it was. And since then, I've just been like, I've got to have that guy eventually. Well, I found him on discount last week and decided that now was the time. So I picked him up. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna do kind of similar to what we did to the Lieber-Mayhew Batman a couple weeks ago. I'm gonna add just some dry brush up here of the gray just to add some texture. I'm going to go through and accent his muscles with the Nuln oil so that he's able to just kind of stand out. I don't want it to be too drastic. You know me, I like things subtle. And so that's what I'm gonna try and do. Just subtle him up, add a few details, darken up the belt just a little bit, things like that. So let's go ahead and knock this guy out. First things first, we're gonna do some of dry brush, just with the same craft gray that I had on the Lieber-Mayhew. Now this Batman has a really wonderful leathery texture to his cowl. And so I'm just gonna accent that with this dry brush. It's going on really nice. Remember how hard it was for me with the Lieber-Mayhew. Since that was a good training exercise, now I'm getting my dry brush down pretty good, where it's not getting on too much. There we go. See, it's starting to accent just that texture. I'm gonna do the same thing with his cape and cowl. Now I'm gonna do what I did with the Lieber-Mayhew, and then I'm gonna go down the edges a little bit with a little bit more gray, but for now, let's just dust this guy up. Oh, look at that. It's looking good. It's just adding enough texture to him that he's gonna stand out a little bit more. Remember, we go from the dark to the light. This guy's already got the dark, so we're just lighting him up just enough. Let's go ahead and go onto the back here, and I'm gonna try and grab just some of these areas here. All right, just getting his boots now, same sort of deal. Just trying to keep it light. As you can see, it's just hitting the right edges. It's hitting the right areas to just add enough character to him. You can see the textures are looking really good on him up here on the cowl and along the cape. Now we're gonna concentrate on the muscles. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna just use some Nuln oil, and I'm just gonna kind of put it in on these areas. I'm gonna try and keep it very light, so that we are able to just highlight those areas. Now remember, with the Nuln oil, you need to move it around quite a bit, otherwise it is going to pool. You can see right there, it's starting to pool. If we just keep it moving, oop, we got some on the line there. If we just keep it moving, then it will slowly spread in that one area. So I don't want to move around too much. I want to concentrate on just right here. And you can see that it's starting to kind of go on and stay in an area. And I don't want it to have a harsh line either. I want it to just be nice and fadey, so I'll kind of go up in here a little bit, around it, and I'm just gonna keep it moving. So this will take a little while for the entire body, but it's gonna end up looking much, much better. So you can start to see how it's starting to just kind of shade that area in and not make too much of a statement. And then I can kind of, brush it up in here a little bit and add a little bit of natural, contours. That's how it would hit his muscles and some of these areas here. And it just starts to stand out a little bit. So that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and start moving on to some of these other areas in here. I'm not even gonna get any more. See, I'm just using the same little bit, because I want this all to be nice and thin. I don't want it to go on super thick at all. Hit his arm there, let's clean that off. I want to hit these kind of, folds and stuff, and just spread it around. You go down in here a little bit. And I just want to keep it moving. We don't want any dots, no dots. That should be your mantra when working with this stuff, is no dots. Right, I'm moving on to this other side here. And I'm just gonna do the same thing. Just gonna keep it moving, keep it moving. And I wanna hit these areas where you can see that there's where it looks like there's a little bit of fold in the fabric. And I want to have it kind of hug in there. And then get it out of places where I don't want it. But it's starting to kind of come together. I'm going to get some of the muscles down here. And just accenting them, keeping everything moving so that it dries while it's moving. I don't want anything kind of picking up that looks out of place. I don't want those dark spots. There we go. It's adding just enough to him to make those muscles stand out. That's looking really nice. Then I can start moving down here to his abs a little bit. And I want to go really light with all this stuff. There's nothing harsh in here because you can see, okay, you can see right there, it's pooled up, it's made dots. Let's avoid that at all costs. Especially here, you can kind of tell that the ab is a slightly different type of plastic. And so it beads up almost instantly, where up here, this is a little bit more porous. And so it didn't. But with the abs, it definitely does immediately. So you got to be right on it when it comes to moving things around. Because this Noon oil, it dries in like 30 seconds. And so you got to be moving it around. Otherwise, you're going to get those unsightly spots. And you don't want that. I've had that with the first couple times I used this. I did this on Sam's Batman when he first got this exact Batman. And his ended up with spots all over it. Because I was just like, oh, here we go, woo. You know, and it was an experimentation piece. He didn't seem to care. But with these ones, now that I know kind of how this stuff reacts and responds, I do not want that. So I'm just going to keep moving this around until it is more or less dry, and it is not doing that anymore. All right, his muscles are starting to look defined. I've been spreading everything out kind of on all these little areas. Now let's go ahead and do the belt. The belt's going to be a little bit easier because we just want it to hang out in the little areas and dirty it up a little bit. So we want it to go into all of the contoured lines so that they stand out. So we don't really want anything on the surface. We just want them in those lines. And then we wipe off everything else. We let the brush absorb it. That's what we're after here. Let's get it all around. And then we just want to do the same thing, where we are not letting it pool up in any one place. We are just letting it kind of be in those areas. So I'm just going to keep moving around. I got a little bit here, so I'm going to, again, any slop you get, just move it around. Let the brush do its thing, use your finger, and that will keep things from going too crazy on you. But we just want to make sure that we don't have any of these dots anywhere. We definitely don't want the dots. And having him have texture to the belt is a big deal. It looks much, much better. It pulls your eye to it. It makes it look like how it likely would in real life. I mean, if you were beating people up running around Gotham City every day, it's gonna get pretty dirty. It's gonna get rained on, it's gonna get all that stuff. And so adding some of this darkness to it just gives it some character. So I'm going really lightly on the legs. I took a little bit less of the Noon oil and I've put it on much more lightly. It's worked out a little bit better than I did up top. It hasn't been beating up quite as much. It is more of a porous plastic like up here on the chest, but it still has gone on really nicely. I've used toilet paper to kind of pick up any excess, and it's going on just a little bit lighter. It's going on a little bit more like shadow, and I like that. I think it's working a little bit better than what I did up here, where it went on a little bit more defined. And you know, I mean, this is all experimentation. I'm just experimenting with all of this. This is what, my 10th figure over the past few months, and each time I feel I get a little bit better. I learn something new, and that's what this is all about. It's a learning experience. It's not a competition. I'm glad it's not a competition. I would have no fun if it was a competition. I like just doing it for me and for you guys, obviously. All right, now that we've got the Nuln oil all on and I'm feeling good about it, I'm just gonna start adding a few details here, starting with the knuckles. He's got these little brass knuckle things on, and I'm just going to silver them up a little bit so that they stand out. I want him to, like the Lee Bermejo Batman, he has silver knuckles, and I just thought this Three Jokers Batman should have silver knuckles too, because it just adds a nice little detail. And I want him to stand out in that way. So there we go. Silver knuckles. Don't get punched by this Batman. It's gonna hurt real bad. All right, just for the heck of it, I'm gonna add a little bit of silver here on the boots, and then I'm gonna dirty them up a little bit. I think it would look nice to just have some silver edges, make it look like he has scratched up these little raised areas here. And then if I need to, I'll go over it again with some Nuln oil that'll darken it up and just make it so that it's a little bit less stand-outy. The last detail I'm going to add is I'm just going to put a little bit of yellow on these kind of pods that he's got here. I like them to stand out a little bit. So I'm just going to put a little bit on so that they stand out a little bit against the dirty belt. Almost like that they're metallic and the rest of it is a kind of canvas. So again, it's a subtle thing, but I like it. I did the same thing with my Azrael Batman on his little buttons on his belt so that they looked metallic. They just stood out enough from the rest to kind of, you know, look like they were of a different material. And that's what I want here. I just want them to look slightly different. So I'm gonna go through all those. I'm also gonna do this dot here in the middle to make it look like it is a little bit more metallic than the rest, and that it's just catching the light a little bit differently than the rest of the belt. And a little bit too much there. There we go. See, and you can start to see how it's, again, it's subtle, but it gives you that sort of real life look of going, oh, that's a different material than the rest. All right, one other fun thing we're gonna do is I'm going to actually take his grappling hook here, and I'm going to customize it as well. This is a fun thing that when they do come with these little, you know, action figure accoutrements, these what are they called? These accessories. It's very fun to also be able to accent them a little bit. And it just it doesn't need much like this. I'm just gonna silver up the little wire here that he's using. I'm gonna go through and add a couple details in here. So it's not a big job, but if you wanna have him hold it and you want it to have a little bit more realistic feel, well, this is how you do it. It's just the same as with the figure. Add a couple of details and it will stand out and look really, really cool. I did it with my Ninja Turtles for a line that I had, and I went through and just added some accents to their weapons because their weapons were all solid colored. And it really did make a huge difference in just their display ability. So definitely worth taking just a couple minutes to do this sort of stuff to their accessories. All right, I think he's done. Nice and simple, but you can see the textures now stand out. He's got just some other details that make him look more realistic. That's what I was going for. Let's go ahead and take a look at a side-by-side here so you can see the difference in just how he stands out. And that's what we were going for. This wasn't a full makeover on this Batman. We weren't doing anything hugely major, but we were able to just accent, show off the back of his cape, make these little details really stand out. I'm very happy with how he turned out. This is kind of my definitive McFarlane Batman, so I'm glad that he really does have a presence now. And I'm super excited for him to go back on that shelf with the other Batman and make his presence known. I'm Stephen Human with Superhuman Customs. Feel free to subscribe, comment. I love hearing from all of you guys. If you have a figure or something that you really want to see, if you want to see me do something or try something that's really difficult, I will totally do it. I'm game for whatever. So if you guys have some ideas, go ahead and give me those ideas. Until then, I'm Steve Human. I'll see you next week.